Hello, welcome. Today we're going to learn about the classes and ID. What is a class and what is an ID? The relationship between the both, when to use a class and when to use an ID. Then I'm going to teach you guys an alternative to class, which we'll be ending this particular lecture with. So I want you to pay keen attention to this particular lecture because this is a lecture that is just like a bridge between the theoretical part of web design and the practical part of web design. If you understand this particular level, it will be easier for you to actually practice and use any tool, whether Webflow, Oxygen Builder, Elementor Page Builder, Beaver Builder, Breakdowns, Brick Builder, and whatever tool out there. Okay, this will make it very easy for you. Now, what is a class and what is an ID? We are going to start up with this because it's very important to understand the both of these. Now, the both of these two I mentioned are both style system. These two are what you use in putting colors, adding colors to an element, adding sizes to an element, adding shapes, aligning an element. Whatever you do to an element, it is these two you use to actually do that. Now, the difference is very simple. An ID is just like our parent. You can't do without an ID. Once you drop in an element, automatically that element have an ID code. I'm going to show you practice of that in a moment. But the class, on the other hand, helps the ID. It actually helps to actually modify an element that have been styled with an ID without affecting the rest of them. I'm going to still explain that. It sounds a little bit confusing, but when we practice and you practice over and over again, it's going to be more easier for you. So understand the both of them as the style guide. They are not different. The only difference is that one is the parent, which is the ID, and the other is the child style. Okay, so the parent is what? The one that have more authority. The parents can do things where the class can't do. Okay, there are things the class can do, and the parents come in and redo that particular stuff or redo that particular styling, and it will be what? Null and void for the class. I'm going to still tell what that is. Okay, so without wasting our time, let's just get in and start practicing. First off, we are going to toss in a div. Okay, a div in the middle of this, and we are going to drop. Let's duplicate this div. Let's just duplicate this div. We have two div, one at the top and one at the bottom. If you click outside this div and drop another element like the heading text, it's going to stay outside the div, but you can still drag it inside this other div. Okay, but that's not what we want to do. When you want to drop an element inside a div, you must select the div. Select the div and select on this, and we add the heading text. We select this other div and we add a button. So these two will be the instances we are going to use for this total course. Now, take for instance, in this particular heading text, we actually added a color to it. You can click on the text from here. Now, mind you, before you add an element, you always need to click on the plus button, add elements. When you come to a new Canva, you are going to click on the plus element to see all available elements which you can pick from. You can scroll down, you can click and expand the rest of them to see the remaining part. We talked about this in the previous class. Now we selected that particular element we want to style, which is the header. Okay, we can select this color and we make it a red color. This color have been applied or have been changed with the ID. If you select an element and you didn't see the ID appear, like as you can see from here, the ID didn't appear, but this one we selected, the ID appeared. Why? Because we have enabled the ID for that particular style. Now, select an element and the ID didn't appear, select on that particular ID part and click on the ID from here. You see it apply. I hope you get that now. Now we have this color of elements as red. Okay. Now we're going to drop in another heading text. Look what happens. We have black because this is actually a global color applied to this particular page. Now, if we want to actually transfer this color to this particular black, maybe we have three blacks from here. Let's just duplicate this, and we also duplicate this one. Let's duplicate this and duplicate again. This particular styling, I don't like it. So we are going to make this particular element width. Let's make it the width. Let's make it a VW of 80 pixel. Oh, we are making the text, the button elements. So we're going to select on this and we make the width VW. VW means view width. Okay, view width means view width, the width you want that particular element to occupy. If you make it 100, it's going to start from the beginning and end at the end. Now we also have what we call VH. VH means view height. we want it to what height we want. If we say 100%, we want it to take 100% of the height of that particular screen. If it's a laptop, it's a tablet, it's a mobile phone, whatever it is, but we don't want to do that. Now we have this set at this. We can go back to the primary and we can center align everything to make sure everything comes to the center. Then next thing we need to do is to stretch this element. But before then, we want it to be horizontally aligned because it's vertically aligned. Everything stacks from top to bottom. But we want it to stack from left to right. What do? We click on the horizontal alignment from here. So once we did that horizontally aligned, the next thing we need to do is to click on the space between to stretch everything. That's one way to create space. The second way to create space is while you are still selecting on the div guiding everything, you can go to gap and add whatever gap size you want to. Then you can also center align everything from there. Let's click on center and everything will come to the center, leaving that space. But if you just want to stretch everything, you can use this space. You can just play around with this. This is what is called the flex box. We're going to talk about this possibly in the next class. So now we have this color from here. If we want to transfer this color to this other one, all you need to do is to click option and copy this color, then click option and paste the color here. Okay, we are actually pasting the element, not pasting the style. You see what happened? Now we want to paste only the color, which is the style, not only the color. Let's increase the size of this text. Let me still show you guys an instance. So we go to the font width. We want to increase the width. The thickness actually is the font width. The size is how large the font is. But the thickness is how large the font alphabet, each of the alphabet is. So we click on the thickness 600. You see it's more bolder than it is. But we'll give it a size of 900. You see it's becoming bolder than the rest of the font. So we just give it a size of 90. You see how bold that is. Okay. So let's take, for instance, we make this size a size of 60 and it's larger than the other one. We copy this, copy style. That's what you're going to use, okay? And we paste this style over here. Click on paste. Automatically, that style has been pasted. But when you click on copy element, we click on copy and you click on paste. We are actually pasting the element, not actually the style, okay? So when you want to copy a style, click option, copy style instead of copy element. So copy the style of the element, then you can transfer it to the other elements. I hope you get the point. We actually copy this. I hope you get the point. So copy style, you go to the next element you want to paste it on and paste it on it. Now, since we understand this and the arithmetics around or surrounding this, let's head on with the rest of the things. Now, look at what happens here. We don't have a class already. We just have an ID. Now, if peradventure we want to actually, we have these three elements, but we want to actually style these three elements at the same time without going through the process of copy, paste. For instance, we have about 100 of this. To stress ourselves, we don't want to do that. You understand? We don't want to do that. You don't want to pass through those threads. You want to use one element to style the rest of them. That is where class comes in. A class can control all these elements without affecting them. But first, there are rules, two rules you have to take in place. Number one, you must make sure that that particular element style is not being controlled by an ID. That's number one. Make sure the element style is not being controlled by ID. Two, make sure that the first element before you start duplicating already have a class applied to it. What this means is this. This particular one now have been styled with a red color. Now look at how to add class. When we click on this element and we want to add class, just click on here and add class. We can call it a class of text or call it texter. Okay, then we click on add. Boom. Automatically that class has been added. So since this class has been added, it doesn't mean that we can just come over here and start playing around with them. Even if we get to this part and then add the class of texter, okay, see the class again, we can add a class of texter. It doesn't transfer the style from here. Why? Because when we created this class, this style have been actually modified by an ID. So what do? We have to select this element and go back to the ID. Remember, see, we can see the color right here again. Why? Because we selected the class. So click on the class and select the ID. Automatically, the color we styled will be available. Now, what we're going to do is clear out the color and clear out the font size and clear out the thickness. We don't want the thickness. To clear out the thickness, just hit on here. Automatically, everything is being reset. Okay, now if we go in and create a new class now, as we just did here, okay, all you need to do is to what? Click option, and if we have duplicated it, but if we have not duplicated it, all you need to do is delete all of them. And now we have created the class in this one. Duplicate this one as much as you want, and then style them as you want. But if you have done you added the class recently and you actually want to start styling the other ones you didn't duplicate before you added this class, all you need to do is to click option and copy style. When you copy a style and paste the next element, it goes with both the word class. Remember, I told you before that an ID can't be moved from one element to the other. Once you create a new, duplicate an element, it moves with a different ID. But class, if you duplicate an element, it goes with that class. Like as we can see from here, tester, we go to number 2 element, we have tester. We go to number 3 element, we have tester, but they have different ID numbers. I hope you understand that. Now, we can select on this first element, then we can go to the color and change it. Remember, if you are still in ID and you change a color, it won't work, because an ID is a parent element and it controls only one element. Remember that rule. Now, when we select on this and select on the texter, we are actually trying to control all these three. So when we say red color, applies to all of them. We say green color, applies to all of them. We say black, applies to all of them. We say green, applies to all of them. Purple, orange, applies to all of them. You get the point? This is how class works. It's as simple as that. If you also go to size, you say, okay, I want to increase the font size. Okay, we'll go here and make it 77, apply to all of them. You get the point? You go to thickness and we say, we want to make the thickness 700, applies to all of them. This is how class works. It's as simple as A, B, C. This makes your work more simpler than everything. We'll be using this style in the future. I want to take my time to explain this. I don't want to rush this because I think this is the most important part that you need to understand. Even if you don't understand in this first course, over our courses, we are going to be using classes and ID over and over again, and I'll be touching them as though we are talking about them. So don't be actually dismayed. Don't be scared of this. It's very simple. This is the most simplest part of web design. It makes my work, my process very easy. A website you're supposed to build in 1 week, you can conclude with this styling in 3 days or 2 days. Now let's continue. Remember, you can do all styling now. We are done with the text. You get the point? It's very simple. But what if we want to actually change this particular element in the middle? We want to change the color to black, but still retain the color of the one up and down and be able to change them without affecting the one in the middle. What do? We need to select on that one and click on ID. Select on ID now. We are not going to style with the class. We're going to select the ID. This is where the role of the parent functions. The parent now can tell this one, do not obey these other child controllers. So when we select this particular one and select the ID, we can come to text and select it and select whatever color we want. It will automatically apply. And now if we go to this particular one and still we are in the class and we switch this color to blue, the color won't affect the one in the middle because this one is actually styled with an ID. Now, this color we changed here actually affected this one in the middle, but just because the ID have a greater priority in styling than a class. Now, what this simply means is that if we go back to this ID and clear out this particular color, we will see blue here instead of that particular color we saw before. Which means the styling we give to an ID, as long as an ID code or an ID is actually present in a particular element, the style goes with it. Even though the particular a class I'm talking about, even though the particular ID is overriding that particular style, whenever you clear out that particular element, it will automatically return to the default of the class that actually is inheriting that particular element. That's number one. Number two is that you can add multiple classes to a singular element or multiple elements. For instance, we say this particular class is for text. It is supposed to be a class we use in increasing the text size, reducing the text size, and all of that. Mind you, we are still in the ID. Now, to note if we are actually styling with an ID or class, look at the edge here. You see a blue line, and the class you see a green line. So any element you go over and you see this particular color at the edge, you know it's a class that is controlling that particular element. But if you see a blue, it's a class that is controlling that particular style. So this is very easy for you. It comes in handy, makes it easy for you to understand which one you're actually playing along with. So we want to clear out this. We don't want this. So So we clear out this particular style, and that is cleared out. Now we want to go back here and we select the class, and we want to increase the size. Everything increases. Remember what we said before. Okay, everything increases. Now this is supposed to be a controller for the text, since we call it a texter. Now the name you call a class doesn't matter. You can come here and call another class text color. Okay, now when we call this text color, we add this class. We have added a text color class, but it won't add to this one. If you go here, we won't see a text color class. Okay, unless we go back here and copy this style. Copy this style and paste here and paste this style here. Or we go to this one at the top and type text color. Then we see the text color and we apply it. Then we say text color and we apply it. Now, when we go to this one, we say text color. Since we say text color is a color styling, we can go here and then we choose whatever color we want. It will apply in only those ones that we apply that particular styling to. So you can use multiple classes to style multiple elements based on what you want. It's just left for you, but I'm going to show you when you are going to do that and when not to actually do that. You get the point? Now, this particular one is left out, but whenever we go to this double one and we click on text color, the color style will automatically come with it. Okay, we click on it. Automatically, that style we apply here will come with it. Why? Because when we created that particular class, we actually styled the color after we created the class. But if you style in an ID and then create a class, when you copy that class, it's not going to go with that particular style. You get the point? So it is very easy. You can just practice along, play along with it. There is no big deal in this. I don't need to waste a lot of time. We are going to talk more about this in the future. But first, I want you guys to understand what is going on. Remember, if you want to actually alter a particular element styling, you can do that with an ID. Just select the ID. We say the color, we want it to be black. Automatically, that one will not respect it. We say the size, we want it to be bolder. It will not respect the others. But whenever we go to these other ones and we say, okay, in the texter, we say the size, we want it to reduce. It will only affect the two. It won't affect this one. Until we go back to this one in the text size and clear the style in ID. So whenever you are playing around with a class and you realize that a particular element you intended to actually work with is not functioning, go and find that particular styling area. If it's a color, go and find the color of that particular element and clear out the ID number in that particular style. I hope you get that very clearly. So that is it about class and ID for text. We are going to play around with the button. It's still the same thing applied. There is no big deal. Okay, so for instance, if we want this particular color, what are we going to do with this color? I don't think we have a color for this background. We have to select this. Possibly we can still apply the same. Now, before I get into this, I want to make this clear that I created, or that we created, a text style and a color style. Doesn't mean that we can use a singular style to control both text, size, color, whatever. You can do that. Okay, but in cases where you may want to have a particular text have a particular color and apply the same style to another element elsewhere, you just want to use that color for another element elsewhere. Okay, that is when you do that, but I don't see the necessity for that. Use a singular class for all elements of the same area. If all elements are in a particular div, use one style for them. When you create a new element for new div, just create a different style so you don't confuse yourself. But when you start getting advanced, it's when you can start using multiple singular style class to multiple elements in different divs. Now, back to this. When we select on this, we can create a new class for this. We can call it BTN, which stands for button new. Okay, call it a name that you can remember. So BTN new. And what we can do is click option, we copy style, and we click option, we paste, and we click option, and we paste. Remember, just watch what happens when we paste this color. Watch what happens over here. Okay, when we paste this, automatically it places that particular style. Now in that style, we can practically go to button color and select, and we give a button color red, whatever color we give it. Button size, we can increase it from here. It follows it. Okay, but we'll get to that particular one and we'll select the ID, and we'll say this particular one, we selected the ID. We want the button size to be less than the other ones. It's going to happen. we want the color of the button to be blue. It's going to happen. I don't know if you get the point. This is very simple and straight to the point. There's no stress in this. There's no big deal in this. There is no big deal. So this is practically what an ID is and what a class is. An ID is just the parent. It overrides the authority of a class. But a class is actually a subject, or I will call it a delegated representative to the what? ID. It actually helps the ID to make its work more easier for actually the designer. It makes works more easier. So instead of creating a style here, when you need to copy this, you say copy, you have to go back here and you paste. Okay, you say copy style, and we go back here and we say paste. We go back here and we say paste. Then whenever we make another change here, maybe for instance now, we go here and make another change. You make it green. It will not follow on with this one because it's ID. These ones only inherited the word style, but they can't inherit the ID number. And since this is tied under the ID number, it can't carry over that particular style to these other ones. But if it is a class can transfer from one to another. A class is not a code. An ID is a code. A class is an alphabet that denotes what? Responsibility. An ID is a series of numbers or codes that denotes what? Authority. These are the two differences between an ID and a class. Okay, now I've shown you the alternative to class. If you don't want to actually, if you're not working with multiple elements, you just want to actually play around with a few things, you can just do the same thing we did here. Click option, copy style. This is the alternative to class. And click option, then you paste what? Style. This is the alternative to what? Class. This is just the alternative to class. So when to use an ID and when to use a class, I actually explained that a few moments ago. Okay, you can actually use an ID whenever you want to override an element style without affecting its members. For instance, as we have these three elements here, they are all members in the same div. But we want to affect only one, you can use an ID to do that. But when you switch to a class, automatically you have to actually affect. You are saying you want to affect all elements. But I said earlier before now, when you affect an element when you affect an element style with an ID and you have a class, you switch an element style with a class, it is not going to affect the rest of them. You see, I'm trying to switch this particular element color. It's not affecting. Why? Because in this particular element and this one, we actually styled the color with an ID. Just watch. When you click on this and click an ID, we are going to say, okay, why we can't see it is because we actually created a different class called the text color. So we styled it with the text color. Sorry about that. Okay. So now what it means is this. Thanks to God, we actually got to this particular stage. What this means is this. If you have two classes in a singular element, that's why I advise always use one class for a singular element, even though it's with multiple groups. Now, once you use one style for a particular, multiple style for a particular element, mind you, be very careful not to try to switch a particular color on the different class. If you try that, it's not going to happen. A class doesn't have an authority over another class. What happens between the two classes is that the first class that first take that particular style is going to rule. But an ID doesn't look at that. An ID overrides whether it is the first or the second because it's a parent style sheet. But a class respects the one that first have that particular style in that particular element. So if we switch the color of this one, we need to go back to ID that is containing the color, and we have to clear out this to see that particular color apply. I don't know if you get the point. So it's better you use one particular ID. Let's delete this. To delete an ID, you can easily, let me just show you that. You can easily click on that and click on this particular space, and you delete that particular ID. Okay? You can delete multiple ID, but you can't delete a class, sorry, but you can't delete an ID. Only way to delete an ID is deleting the element itself. When you delete an element, automatically the ID is gone. So that's practically it. You can apply this to anything. Now, for instance, let's just add another div inside of this, and we fill this div color with red. We want to add a curved edge. Let's duplicate this. And this particular one, we give it a class of diva, and we add the class, and we copy the class from this one, and we copy style, and we paste it to this one. Okay, now this one we actually styled it with the ID, so we have to clear out that color in the ID. We have to also do the same thing with this one, because if we don't clear that color, it's not going to change. So in this one, we have to select the diva now, and we can switch the color to whatever we want. It's going to affect the two of them. Now if we go into advanced and we go to, let's go to borders. Okay, and border radius, we want to curve it to 30 or 33. It's going to affect the two of them. Okay, now we go to border size. We're going to give it a color of let's give it a color of yellow, and we make this a solid. Solid means we want the border around it to be solid, a singular color. Then we give it a size of 11. It's going to be very thick. Okay, it's not even very thick. Okay, it's very thick. So this is it. It applies. You can just style multiple things at the same time. This is what the power of classes is. This is just what the power of classes is. You can use it to do anything at all. You can use it to control multiple things at the same time. I think this is just enough of what we actually have for classes and ID. If you have further question about the class and the ID, whether in Oxygen Builder or any other tool, let me know. Now, this particular style we applied here works for every tool, every particular tool. This particular style is actually called the CSS rules. It's ID and classes is a CSS rule. It is not only specific for Oxygen Page Builder. Why I love Oxygen Page Builder is because it respects the CSS rule. So anything you're going to experience here, you're still going to experience in whether you're using Webflow, whether you're using Elementor Page Builder, whether you're using Beaver Builder, Breakdance, Brick Builder, whatever builder that supports the classes and ID, you are going to experience this. So understanding this now makes it easy for you to build any kind of website with any tool. I'll meet you in the next class.